Hey folks, it's Deke here. I'm very excited to be on 1002 albums, and my pick is Hanoi Rocks, Two Steps from the Move.
Hi, I'm Jeff Steven, and you're listening to the 1000 Second Album Podcast. I spent 10 years going through the 1001 albums you must hear before you die, and now I'm asking people that are important to me all about the albums that are important to them. Enjoy! This is the 1000 Second Album Podcast. I'm Jeff Steven, and I'm particularly excited for today's episode as outside of my immediate family, I think I've talked to this person more than anyone else in the last 10 years, and which is even more impressive considering we've never actually met in person. He is recently retired. He is the host of Scotch on the Rocks, the pride of Thunder Bay. He is Super Deeks. Please welcome Deke.
Hey Jeff, thanks for having me on, buddy.
Oh, thank you very much for coming. And the album of choice is Hanoi Rocks, Two Steps from the Move. And of
Yeah,
course, the inevitable sort of the opening question, was this your Hanoi Rocks entry point?
yeah, it sure was. Jeff, it was all the power of video back in 1984.
Yes.
Case in point, when I started high school in September of '84,
Hmm.
Much Music had just started in Canada,
Yes.
right? But it was on a pay TV station because there was only about 10 channels available here in Thunder Bay.
Right.
I didn't really pay that much attention to it until about the end of September when I went to school one day,
Hmm.
and one of my buddies, Muck, he said to me, "Hey, I just seen the new Iron Maiden video." And I went, "Excuse me?" He said, "Yeah." He goes, "Iron Maiden has a new video out for a song called Two Minutes to Midnight." And I'm like, "What? Where? How? Like what?" And he says, "Well, I got Much Music." And I'm like, "Okay." So that night I went home. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my parents, and I'm saying, if I keep my marks up, and you probably know where this was going. So I got Much Music,
Yeah.
and with back then we are using VHS, right?
Of course.
So
Yes.
I'd be in school, and come 4 o'clock on Thursdays, there would be the Pepsi Power Hour. So
Yes.
I would push record. I'd get home. I would do my homework in about 5 minutes, and go and watch that week's episode. And sure enough, there was a video by a band called Hanoi Rocks,
Hmm.
and the song was called Up Around the Bend.
Yes.
Now, I'd never heard that song before, but I'd seen the video, and it was the power of video. I mean, here's these guys glammed out, coming down on a helicopter, crashing some, swanky dinner party.
Yeah.
And there's guitar player Andy McCoy, crashing it and going on like a zip line, almost like circa 1984, and them hitting the stage, and they're bouncing with all this energy. And I was hooked. I mean, they
Yes.
weren't really metal. They were, everybody was calling them glam metal. And, I mean, hair metal wasn't even a term back then. But I just liked the vibe they gave. And it wasn't up until I got the record that I didn't even know that Up Around the Bend was a Creedence Clearwater Revival song. I was just under the assumption that, hey, this is a Hanoi Rock song. This is like a little ass kicker of a track. So there you go. So it was all due to the power of video on Much Music, when Much Music showed videos and not reality shows.
There was a time back in the
There
day.
was a time, yeah.
I had that exact same reaction with coming up around the bend because I thought, oh, this is a really catchy tune. And then when I looked it up, it said the songwriter was Fogarty. And I was like, Fogarty? I don't remember that name from Hanoi Rocks. And then sure enough, oh yeah, CCR, that makes sense. And I love that the incentive to do homework was if I get my homework done, the Power 30 is on. And so got to check that. That's fantastic. I like that as a motivator. And I remember you brought up this record as back in the day when we did our top 15 on the 15th,
Hmm.
that the blogging community did a few years back. This was one of your choices.
Hmm.
Yet on the 1001 albums list, the editors suggested Back to Mystery City as
Hmm.
the Hanoi Rocks record that must be heard before you die. And so I guess my question for you is why do you think they chose that one over Two Steps from the Move?
That's an interesting question. And I think it just boils down to however a certain album resonates you whenever you hear it first time. Now, Hanoi Rocks with Back to Mystery City, it has some great tracks
Mhm.
like Mental Beat, Until I Get You, Malibu Beach Nightmare. I mean, those are
Mhm.
all solid tracks. It's
Sure.
just that my discovery point was Two Steps from the Move due to the video. But,
Yes.
who knows? I mean, the funny thing with entry points is, case in point, going back to Iron Maiden, my
Hmm.
discovery point with Iron Maiden was Killers back in the summer of 1981 with
Right.
Paul Di'Anno, right?
Hmm.
The second Iron Maiden album I bought was a year later with Bruce Dickinson on Number of the Beast. And since then, I like any of those Bruce albums from the 80s probably more than Killers.
Right.
And so it's just however the album impacts you upon hearing it for the first time. So entry points are kind of a funny thing, so but for some reason, Two Steps from the Move, I mean, yeah, you called it, man. It's still in my top 15. It'll
Yeah.
never get nudged out of there.
And nor should it. I like it.
Or should
And
it?
but you're right. The when is so important, and especially you
Mhm.
mentioned it was grade 9 when you got introduced to it. And so what's that old Bare Naked Lady song? This is Deke in grade 9, baby. And so
Yeah, that's
but
it.
again, and that's such a pivotal age for discovering music. And if I think of, I would have been in grade 9 in 95, 96, and so I'm very unreasonable about the mid 90s for that reason, because
Mhm.
the music was such a huge part of the life then, that it's yeah, the when was such a critical point, I think, for me, with a lot of that stuff from that time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was a
Yeah,
great time back then to even be a music fan.
for sure.
There was no such thing as streaming. It was all turntables and Walkmans,
Yeah,
right?
and physically going to the store to acquire the music and have to wait to go home to put it on. And yeah,
And devouring magazines.
yeah,
Like that's how I read about a lot of these bands was, you know, got into Hanoi Rocks, and it's like, okay, like I need to read about these guys.
yeah,
Like, where can I find it? Like Kerrang magazine, which is a British music
yeah,
publication, they were the ones who did a lot. The North American magazines really not so much until, of course, the car crash, but
right,
that's a story for another time.
for
But
sure.
yeah, so it was a great time to grow up in discovery. There was no playlists, no Spotify, no Apple. So, well, there was Apple computers back
Yes.
then, but not what
The
it
more
is
like
nowadays.
it was the, what was that, the Macintosh Classic or the Apple II GS or that sort of thing. So
Yeah,
not quite iPads at that point. So
which is about as big as your stove now back
that's
then.
right, yeah. So not quite as compact. That's right.
Yes,
But
right.
but speaking of reading about Hanoi Rocks,
Hmm.
because this one was a new to me when I was looking up different things about it,
Hmm.
and it looks like there's a bunch of different versions or regional variations of the album.
Yeah,
What would you say? What is the sort of definitive version, the one that hooked you?
the definitive version of Two Steps from the Move is the 10-song vinyl album.
Yes.
Um, I know there's other tracks out there like the deluxe editions,
Yeah.
the bonus tracks.
Yeah.
They're remixes, the odd live stuff, but it seems like the live stuff was coming from their previous, albums. It wasn't really now. Put it this way, Jeff, if they were to if they had happened to record live album
Yeah.
before Razzle passed, I'd be all over that,
Hmm.
But for me, I am just good with my vinyl copy, and of course I have it up on Apple Music too. I mean, I'll stream it because it's just one of those must-haves.
For sure, for sure. And the
Yeah,
turntable's not always accessible if you're, out and about doing things. So
yeah,
yeah.
it's the go-to is my vinyl copy for sure.
Oh, nice. And so the 10 song one is the definitive edition. And
Yeah,
from that list, again, I couldn't find any duds in the set list at all. Are there any ones in particular from the 10 tracks that really jump out at you?
basically, to be totally honest with you, tracks 2 to 10 jump out at me.
Okay.
Basically the whole album, I think the weakest song on there is Up Around the Bend, which is the lead off track.
Right.
And it's not a weak track.
No.
It's just compared to the other ones that they were writing themselves. And I mean, if you do a deep dive into the record, I mean, most of Two Steps from the Move was recorded in Toronto
Yeah.
with Bob Ezrin producing,
Okay.
who did about, geez, I don't know, he did about 6 co-writes with Andy McCoy on that record. So he had a big hand in shaping the songs and the sonics.
Right.
Bob Ezrin, if people don't know, he's produced Alice Cooper. He's done Kiss Destroyer. He's done Pink Floyd, The Wall. I mean, he's done a ton of stuff. I mean, just Google him, right?
Yeah,
But
not a bad resume at all.
no, and it's amazing that they actually got him.
Yeah.
But at that time, they were signed. They finally got signed to Epic in the States.
Yeah.
So I guess they figured Epic probably thought, okay, now we're dumping cash into this band.
Yeah.
Let's get a big name producer and make the push on the record. So yeah, so it's kind of cool. Plus, it has some CanCon involved with it, which is probably another reason
That's
why I
right.
like it.
That doesn't hurt the cause at all, for
No,
sure.
it doesn't hurt the cause.
But that's fantastic when the gateway song ends up being the least impactful for you in the end, where like it's the one that might have got you into the album,
Mm-hmm.
but it ends up being less impressive than the rest of the tracks, which is pretty neat when that's the case.
Yeah, and the cool thing about it too is I like how if you have a vinyl copy of it, side one ends with "Don't You Ever Leave Me," where
Okay. Yeah.
you flip it over to side two, it's "Million Miles Away," and it's kind of neat that they sequenced it to bookend it almost. I don't want to say ballads,
Yeah.
but more mid-tempo-ish, slowy kind of tunes, and I always kind of dug that. Plus, Mike Monroe, the lead singer, who looked like back then Marilyn Monroe,
Sure.
he played not only was he a vocalist, but he also ripped out saxophone on there.
Yes.
And there's saxophone on Underwater World and
Yes.
also Million Miles Away. And you think sax in a glam metal band,
Right.
really? But they made it work. And you listen
Yeah.
to a track like Million Miles Away, it starts off all balladry,
Yeah.
and then there's no guitar solo and it's a sax solo, and then it almost goes into like a Duran Duran mid 80-ish kind of
Yeah.
vibe, and then reverts back to the original sonic of the ballad. And to me, it's a genius, well crafted song.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so good. I mean, I'm still pumped all these years later,
Yeah.
what, almost 40 years later,
Yeah.
talking about this crazy song. But
Yeah.
it's just one of those ones where it was like, it even opened up my ears back then as what was I probably going on 16,
Yeah.
like wow, like these guys can still rock out those crazy adolescent tunes like High School and I Can't
Yeah.
Get It, but they could, when they really wanted to, they come crunch time, they could actually have something to say,
For
you know
sure. For
and
sure.
but on the flip side, they had a tune like Boiler, and I never knew what a boiler was
No.
until I read the lyrics in
Right.
in the record. And I thought, oh, okay,
Well, that's what
interesting.
it is.
So, yeah, that's what a boiler is. But like they had all different kinds of like sonics and
Yes.
a different vibe. They just weren't banging out rocker after rocker after rocker. And another big attraction for me also was Mike Monroe's vocals.
Yes.
Now, he looked back then like a pretty boy, but he also had a bit of gruff in his vocal. And
Sure.
if you listen to the last track on the album, like Cutting Corners,
Yes.
and he sings the verses,
Yeah.
you can really hear it in the vocal. And that is just something I like so much. I'll sometimes just,
Yeah.
when I'm playing it when I'm streaming it, and right when it gets halfway through, I'll just punch it back just to hear the opening two verses of
Yeah.
his vocals, because they're just like stellar.
Yeah.
So I'm 55 and I'm still a fanboy.
Yeah, but that's the sign of a good album where your enthusiasm hasn't waned at all, where it's just
Yeah.
it was classic then, and it's still the same impact now, which is fantastic. And it's neat too because the one you mentioned, Million Miles Away, that had the synth intro as well,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Yeah.
right.
And
Yeah.
so I know for me, so my grade 9 experience, like I said, was in the mid 90s, and I think I was really reluctant to get into anything that wasn't guitar based drums. And so when you had a group that went outside the usual format and could impress you like that, that was significant for sure.
Well, yeah, because on the same thing, I'd be playing AC/DC, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden,
Yeah.
Accept, and for a band to have a song like Million Miles Away and still pull me in as a listener,
Yeah.
and not make it a skip track, that says something about the quality of the craftsmanship of McCoy's songwriting back then.
Hmm.
So,
And like you said, the sequencing mattered too, where
mhm,
it's like it was and an argument in favor too of the side A, side B
mhm,
format as well, where
mhm.
again it wasn't just sort of a random stringing together of the tracks, but it had that sort of arc to it where you had the sort of slower tempos in the middle, and then the rougher edges with like the cutting corners to wrap things up and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. So
Oh, it's so good. I mean, it's
yeah.
just solid right through. I mean, everybody that's listening to this should go throw it on, dump it on your Spotify, on your format of
Yeah.
listening streaming devices.
That's right. And I like the as a high school teacher, I enjoyed the high school where he was saying like, I love to teach. Like, oh, he wants to be a high school teacher. Like, oh, he wants to yell at people. It's not quite the same, but
Yeah,
so he had a slightly different motivation for wanting to teach high school, I guess. But
yeah, well, something about anatomy as well.
I suppose, yeah. The other one that jumped out at me was Boulevard of Broken Dreams as well, because
Yeah,
I of course initially thought of the Green Day had a song like that about 20 years later, I guess. But this one
yeah,
it
yeah,
it
yeah.
was it was nice and up tempo, and you could definitely hear some future like the track Futurama. There's a
Mhm.
part in that where I even scribbled down like I hear a future Slash here where just the guitar, it would have been Andy McCoy's the guitar player.
Yep.
Yeah, so would it like a line he was doing at one point just sounded like, oh, I think before Slash did You Could Be Mine, I think he listened to this song there because it was like it looked like the sort of foundation for some of the other bands that came later as well.
Well, absolutely. And even in Underwater World, the line is "Welcome to the Jungle."
Right. That's right.
So, and then, when Axl and Gunners hit it big, they
Yeah.
always referred to Hanoi Rocks as an influence.
Yes.
And I think even at one time they were they reissuing the old Hanoi Rocks catalog on their one of their labels. I don't know if it ever came to be, but I think there was talk at one point
Oh yeah.
that they were thinking of reissuing. This is going back like
Yeah.
30 years ago,
Yeah.
but so, they even band like Guns N' Roses were influenced by Hanoi Rocks.
For sure. And actually that was when I looked back on it, that was my introduction to the group because it would have been, I think it was on Use Your Illusion 1. Michael Monroe did the harmonica on one of the tracks.
Mhm.
It was a Bad Obsession, or I can't
Bad
remember which one.
Obsession.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was neat to so I thought of him first as the harmonica sort of guest star. And then here when he broke out the saxophone, I was like, all right, this guy's got some versatility. This is nice.
Yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, he's a talented guy. I mean, he's
Yeah.
still going nowadays with solo records, and if you YouTube him, like he still looks in pretty good shape, and
Yeah.
he's still climbing the PA stacks
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And
Voice is
uh,
holding up okay too.
yeah, it
And
sounds
yeah.
good to me. Yeah.
Oh,
So
good.
he's out there. I think he recently turned 60, and in Finland, the original Hanoi Rocks got together
Yeah.
and played a 5-song set, and they even had the original drummer Chip Casino before Razzle joined.
Okay.
So it was the 5 actual original guys. And I mean, of course, I'm watching YouTube clips with people's phones, but
Yeah.
they sounded pretty good.
Oh,
You
nice.
know, I
Nice.
mean, you can't go wrong when your guitar player's name is Nasty Suicide.
Yeah. It does create a certain atmosphere for it, I guess. But yeah, it's interesting that the title of this jumped out at me too, where it's the
Mhm.
2 steps from the move.
Yeah.
I got the sort of vibe from that where it's like it's sort of approaching a goal, but it's not quite there yet, where it's sort of in striking distance, or as a tip of the hat to our friend Gordy and the boys from Road Apples, they're on
Mhm.
the verge.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
and you alluded to it earlier, but there was the tragedy in the band with the drummer passing away, and it feels like one of those. Was this the last studio album before he passed as well?
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it feels like one of those sort of what if situations, like if that hadn't happened, where might they have gone from here? So I guess that's my question for you: is that in an alternate timeline where the band is still intact, where do you think they would have gone after 2 steps from the move?
I really think with the push they were getting and the press coverage they were starting to get over on this side of the pond, meaning North America,
Yeah.
I think 2 steps from the move would have broken them.
Mhm.
If not, it would have laid the foundation for the following record, because I think they were on like a real creative binge. so to
Right.
speak. I mean, Andy McCoy was for sure being the
Yeah.
main songwriter. So I think that probably would have played out. I think Two Steps from the Move might have been the one because, it's there's about 4 or 5 singles they could have easily put out on here,
Right.
and the funny thing is, they're probably one of the few bands that, when I got the record, I think it was October of '84,
Hmm.
and then the crash happened,
Yeah.
and then they broke up by February. And I was like, I just got into this band four
Right.
months ago and they're done.
Right.
Right. Like, but the music lives on, and
Hmm.
as a fan, it still just totally resonates with me.
Yeah.
So back to your question about On the Verge, yeah, for sure. I think they would have kicked down some doors with this record, but it didn't have a chance. I mean, they just
No.
folded up shop and called it a day because,
Yeah.
I from what I read, uh, they got another drummer in, and they did a Finnish farewell
Yeah.
TV show, and then I think Sammy Affa, the bass player, said, "You know what, I'm done. I can't do this," and
Right.
it just unraveled from there. And it was a shame. It was like, damn, I really like these guys, and now
Yeah.
they're done.
Yeah.
Who does that?
And
Like,
like I just got into them. So,
like, really? Like,
yeah.
but and that's the power of music. It's
Yeah.
today. It still lives on. It's still vital. So to
Yeah.
me, it's still a fantastic record.
Yeah, and something to be said there too, where the lineup mattered as well, where you couldn't just bring somebody else in and have the same vibe or the same feel or the same
Oh,
sound. Like it had to be those people in that place, and so
yeah.
yeah. But yeah, the I guess sort of my summary question would be the sort of catch-all, like why would you say of all the great albums out there, why would this be the 1,000-second album that one must hear?
I just think if you're listening to hard rock, if you're a straight hard rock fan, in which I am, I don't deviate from my box very much. So, and even back then when I was a young teenager, I
Mhm.
never deviated into other forms of music. It was all basically on the heavier side of
Yeah,
stuff, of like the bands I mentioned before, Priest, Maiden,
yeah,
Leopard, Accept, bands of that. But
yeah,
here came a band that still could play heavy, like, but not heavy, if you know what I mean. Like
sure.
they just had good rocking
Hmm.
tunes. I just like their vibe. I like their look. I like the songs that they wrote. And, like I said, when we broke down Million Miles Away,
Yeah,
it opened my ears to, wow, these guys can actually take the foot off the gas pedal,
yeah,
and I don't want to say play it safe, but put out a very crafty track. And,
yeah,
you know, and then you can take the flip side of it and get into songs like High School and
yeah,
Boiler and Futurama and Cutting Corners, where they're just like straight ahead driving tunes. So, it's just one of those records that have just stuck with me since 1984.
yeah,
And here we are in 38 years later,
yeah.
if my
That's
math
it.
is right. And it's
Yeah.
still, I guess maybe there'll be a 40th anniversary reissue coming up. I
Because
don't
there could
know,
be a
but
deluxe edition ready to go, I imagine. So,
you can have me back in 2 years when
yeah, I
I'm
like it.
gushing over
And
that.
we'll talk the bonus tracks and that sort of
Yeah,
thing. So
yeah, for sure, for
that's
sure.
good. But yeah, I can definitely see that argument too, where if you were used to just as you called it, your box of rock, you knew what you liked, but then a group like this could sort of challenge you to go outside
Mm,
that usual comfort zone. And I think
mm,
those albums are great when they can sort of, push us into some new territories
yeah,
and not lose an ounce of quality along the way. Like it kept you engaged right through it. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And it was just they just got dealt a real bad hand. I
yeah,
mean, and who knows, maybe this album would have catapulted them into huge stardom, and then the follow-up album not as good. I
yeah,
mean, it could have happened. So maybe kind of it's just the way it is,
yeah,
but I mean, it's always fun to speculate on that
for
kind of
sure,
thing, like
for
I
sure.
like that question that, where would they have gone with this
Yeah,
if they continued, if nothing had happened. And
yeah,
so, but hey, that's why they say that's life.
Yeah. And if I guess if they had to end after this album, they're certainly ending on a high note. And so that's something as well.
And for me, it is the high note.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And they I think they're officially my favorite Finnish export as well for music as well. Jari Kurri might still be my favorite overall Finnish export for as the hockey player, but
yeah.
but still, what a sound though.
Yeah, they were just a great band, great look, great vibe, great songs. Like I told you a few minutes ago, just everybody needs to get on their streaming device and just check out any Hanoi Rocks, but definitely give Two Steps from a Move if you're in a hard rock / glam rock kind of vibe. That's the best fix for you.
Yeah, this will do the trick.
Indeed.
I like it. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming today, Deke. A huge thank you. And yeah, I guess to be continued when the 40th anniversary comes out.
Yeah, hit me up, brother. I'm there. I'll be there for you.
Excellent. Alrighty, enjoy the day.
All right, thanks, Jeff.
This has been the 1000-Second Album Podcast. Thanks for sharing some of your time, energy, and attention with us today. Take care.